Imagine pulling off the perfect crime, only to be taken down by a rogue Roomba, a vending machine gone wrong, or your own terrible life choices. Some criminals plan their heists for months. Others? They manage to get themselves arrested before they even leave the crime scene. Today we're diving into 101 of the dumbest ways criminals got caught. Trust me, by the end of this, you'll be questioning how these people made it through life, let alone a heist. So, if you're ready to lose faith in criminal masterminds, hit that like button, and let's jump into the madness. 1. Some criminals plan their heists for months. Others? They just wing it, like the guy in Kentucky who broke into a house, made himself a sandwich, and then dozed off on the couch. The homeowner walked in the next morning to find him snoring with a half-eaten PB&J in his hand. The police had the easiest arrest of their careers. 2. Florida is famous for bizarre crimes, but this one takes the cake. Or rather, the plastic bag. A man attempted to rob a gas station with his face covered in a grocery bag. Great plan, right? Well, not really. He forgot to poke air holes and passed out from lack of oxygen. The cashier just stood there, watching him collapse before calling the cops. 3. Some thieves are smooth operators. Others, not so much. One guy in Washington snatched a smartphone and took off sprinting, straight into a police station. He only realized his mistake when he was already surrounded by officers. They didn't even need to chase him. He basically arrested himself. 4. If you're going to break into a building, make sure it's not actively full of cops. A man in Texas tried to escape arrest by climbing into a ceiling vent. Maybe he thought he was in an action movie. Reality hit hard when the duct gave way, dropping him directly into an interrogation room. Imagine the officers' faces when their suspect just fell from the sky. 5. When robbing a bank, leaving a clue behind is a bad idea. Leaving your own pay stub with your full name and address? That's next level dumb. That's exactly what happened in California when a thief used his own paycheck to scribble a hold-up note. Detectives didn't even have to work for this one. They just showed up at his house. 6. Criminals and social media don't mix. A man in Pennsylvania broke into a house, took a few valuables, and then, get this, logged into Facebook on the victim's computer. He got so distracted checking his notifications that he forgot to log out. The homeowner returned, found his profile still open, and handed the info over to the police. Talk about digital footprints. 7. If you're planning a crime, make sure your phone is on silent, or better yet, just don't bring it. 2 burglars in Oklahoma were discussing their next move when one of them accidentally butt-dialed 911. The entire conversation was recorded, including their exact location. Officers didn't even have to search for them. They just followed the live audio. 8. Stealing from a store and then filling out a job application at the same place? Bold move. A woman in Illinois shoplifted from a department store, but before leaving, she decided to apply for a job. She used her real name and phone number. The store manager passed her details to the police before she even made it out of the parking lot. 9. Grand Theft Auto sounds exciting, unless you don't know how to drive stick. A thief in Florida swiped a car from a parking lot, only to realize it had a manual transmission. After struggling with the gears for a few minutes, he gave up, abandoned the car in the middle of the road, and ran. His failed getaway was caught on multiple traffic cameras, making him one of the easiest arrests of the week. 10. You know your robbery isn't going well when the cashier calls you by name. A man in Georgia pulled a fake gun on a convenience store worker demanding cash, but instead of panicking, the cashier squinted at him and said, "Steve, I know it's you." Realizing his disguise was useless, Steve mumbled something about just joking and ran home. The police picked him up an hour later. 11. When hiding from the cops, dumpsters might seem like a good idea, until trash day rolls around. One unlucky thief in Ohio learned this the hard way. As the garbage truck's compactor roared to life, his hiding spot turned into a death trap. Panicked screams from inside the metal jaws made the driver hit the emergency stop. He was pulled out just in time, only to be greeted by police officers. 12. Of all the houses to break into, this guy chose the worst possible one. Trying to score some quick cash, a New York burglar slipped into an apartment, only to freeze when he spotted a familiar face in a framed photo. Realizing his mistake, he bolted. But it was too late. His parole officer recognized him on security footage and made sure their next meeting happened in handcuffs. 13. When sneaking into a house, most burglars check if someone's home. Not this guy. A man in Colorado crept through an open window, only to hear the unmistakable sound of a shotgun being cocked. "I think I'm in the wrong house," he stammered. "You think?" the off-duty cop inside replied. The thief didn't wait for an answer. He sprinted straight into the arms of responding officers. 14. Some criminals are their own worst enemies, like the guy who robbed a store and decided to celebrate with a shopping spree. After stuffing his pockets with stolen cash, he waltzed into a bar next door and started buying drinks for everyone. The bartender, noticing his sudden generosity, casually asked where all the money came from. His answer? "Oh, I just hit that place down the street." The bartender nodded, poured him another round, and called 911. 15. Some criminals plan elaborate escapes. This guy? He stole a golf cart. A man in Florida tried to flee a robbery by hijacking the slowest vehicle possible. The police simply walked after him. When they caught up, he yelled, "You can't arrest me, I'm on private property." The cops disagreed. 16. Hiding from the police is an art. Hiding in a tree while wearing a neon orange jumpsuit? That's modern abstract comedy. A fugitive in Oregon scrambled up a tree to evade capture, but failed to consider how obvious he looked. As police surrounded the area, he confidently remained still, until a squirrel landed next to him. Startled, he lost his grip and tumbled right into a thorny bush, where officers were already waiting. 17. If you're going to use a disguise, make sure it actually disguises you. A Michigan man tried robbing a gas station in a ski mask, but completely forgot about his giant, unmistakable neck tattoo spelling out his last name. The clerk took one look, smirked, and greeted him by name. Flustered, the thief grabbed a few bills and ran, only to be arrested at home an hour later. The police didn't even have to check security footage. Everyone in town already knew who he was. 18. Some criminals have nerves of steel. Others crack under pressure, like the guy who tried to rob a store but got so anxious he stopped to apologize mid-heist. The clerk, confused, asked if he really wanted to go through with it. The would-be robber sighed, shook his head, and quietly put the money back. Then, in a final moment of awkwardness, he asked if he could still buy a lottery ticket. He walked out empty-handed, but his mugshot was all over the news by nightfall. 19. Some criminals should really study basic physics. One unlucky thief thought sneaking in through a chimney would be an easy way to rob a house. What he didn't figure? That Santa-sized entries require Santa-sized planning. He got wedged inside, unable to move up or down, and spent the next 12 hours reconsidering his choices. By morning, the homeowner heard muffled shouting from inside the walls. The fire department arrived, broke open the chimney, and pulled out a very sooty, very embarrassed criminal. 20. A Texas fugitive thought he was safe, so he decided to have a drink. One drink turned into 3, and soon he was bragging to strangers about how nobody could ever catch him. Unfortunately, one of those strangers was an undercover cop. Instead of running, he raised his glass and toasted, "Guess that's game over." Even the officer had to admit, at least the guy had style. 21. Some criminals leave fingerprints, others leave something even worse, an unforgettable smell. A man in Louisiana broke into a house and hid in a closet while the homeowner was still inside. His mistake? Eating an entire plate of beans right before the break-in. Within minutes, the unbearable stench gave him away. The homeowner, assuming a gas leak, called 911, only for officers to find the world's least stealthy burglar curled up behind some coats, regretting his dinner choices. 22. A thief in California thought he had the perfect getaway plan: steal a bike and pedal off at top speed. Unfortunately, he didn't check what kind of bike he was stealing. Turns out, it was a stationary exercise bike from a gym's outdoor display. He hopped on, started pedaling, and went nowhere. Bystanders watched in disbelief as he desperately pumped the pedals before realizing his blunder. The police found him still untangling himself from the handlebars. 23. Some disguises work. Others, not so much, like the guy in Florida who tried to rob a convenience store while wearing a transparent plastic bag over his head. Maybe he thought it would blur his face? Spoiler, it didn't. The cashier, barely holding back laughter, handed over the cash while dialing 911. Officers had his identity before he even made it out the door. 24. An Ohio man figured he could outsmart security cameras by drawing a mask on his face with a black marker. Not a ski mask, not even face paint, just two big, cartoonish circles around his eyes. Shockingly, this did not make him unrecognizable. The store clerk simply followed the very obvious ink trail back to his car, where police found him trying to scrub his disguise off with a bottle of Mountain Dew. 25. A man in New York thought he could avoid a DUI charge by switching seats with his dog. Yes, his dog. When officers pulled him over, he panicked, picked up his Labrador and plopped it into the driver's seat. He then got out, acting like a confused pedestrian. The cops, struggling to keep a straight face, asked if his chauffeur had a license. He didn't. But the man did get a free ride to jail. 26. Some criminals forget their masks. Others go a step further, like the guy who robbed a fast food place while wearing his work uniform with his name tag still attached. His boss saw the security footage and called him mid-robbery. The thief, realizing how bad things looked, actually answered the phone and tried to explain. It's not what it looks like. It was exactly what it looked like. 27. A burglar in Texas broke into a house, spotted a massive TV and decided to steal it. The problem? It was too big to fit through the door. He tried every angle, tilt, squeeze, even removing the frame, but nothing worked. Eventually, exhausted, he sat down to watch TV instead. He was halfway through a movie when the homeowners returned. His excuse? I was just testing it out. The police tested his ability to fit in a patrol car. 28. A smooth getaway is key to any good robbery. Unfortunately, this guy lacked both smoothness and a getaway. Rushing out of a gas station with a bag of stolen cash, he ran face first into the automatic doors that hadn't opened fast enough. The impact knocked him flat on his back, scattering the money everywhere. The clerk, barely holding back laughter, simply leaned over the counter and asked, "You good?" Moments later, the police walked in. 29. Some burglars are unlucky. Others are just bad at physics, like the guy who tried to escape through a skylight but miscalculated his jump. Instead of clearing the gap, he bounced off the edge, boomeranged backward, and landed directly in a bathtub. Unable to climb out, he was still soaking in confusion when officers arrived. 30. Not every crime ends in an arrest. Some end in a life lesson. A man in Georgia tried to steal a motorcycle by revving it up and speeding off. One small problem. He forgot to check if it had a lock on the back wheel. The moment he hit the gas, the bike flipped forward, launching him like a human catapult. By the time police arrived, he was still groaning on the pavement. The officer's first question? Need a ride? Or just a Band-Aid? 31. A man in Wisconsin thought he had the perfect heist planned: break into a bakery, steal the cash, and sneak out undetected. What he didn't plan for: the industrial mixer he accidentally switched on while climbing over the counter. The massive metal beaters caught his hoodie, spun him around like a human dough ball, and slammed him onto the floor. He woke up to paramedics, a squad of cops, and a very unimpressed baker. 32. If you're going to break into a house, maybe don't get too comfortable. A burglar in Nevada raided a home, but instead of making a quick exit, he ran a bubble bath, poured himself a glass of wine, and put on the homeowner's silk robe. The relaxation was so effective that he dozed off in the tub. The homeowner walked in, took one look, and simply said, "You better clean that drain before the cops get here." 33. Shoplifting is usually about being discreet. This guy, however, had all the subtlety of a parade float. Casually strolling out of a store while dragging a 6-foot Christmas tree behind him, he acted surprised when stopped by security. Insisting he thought Christmas trees were free this time of year, he tried to talk his way out of it. The officer raised an eyebrow and asked, "Buddy, it's June." 34. A thief in Alabama tried to hold up a liquor store by pointing a banana at the cashier under his jacket, hoping it would look like a gun. The problem? Mid-threat, the banana snapped in half and fell to the floor. The cashier, without missing a beat, picked it up, took a bite, and asked, "That's all you got?" The man sprinted out, leaving both the banana and his dignity behind. 35. A getaway plan is crucial, unless you're this guy. After robbing a gas station, a thief in California sprinted to his escape vehicle, only to realize he left his keys inside the store. Instead of improvising, he ran back in and demanded the keys from the same cashier he had just robbed. By that point, the police were already pulling up outside. 36. Some criminals panic, others overdo it. A man in Kentucky was pulled over for a broken taillight, but before the officer could say a word, he blurted out, "I swear the trunk isn't full of stolen goods." The cop, who hadn't even looked at the trunk yet, slowly nodded. "All right then," he said. "Let's take a look, shall we?" 37. A thief in Ohio broke into a car, stole a wallet, and decided to use the credit card right away at a coffee shop across the street from where he committed the crime. Even better, the card belonged to a police officer who was sitting in the same cafe when the cashier called to verify the transaction. The officer simply turned around, tapped the thief on the shoulder, and said, "That's my card, genius." 38. When a robbery turns into a snack run, you know things have gone wrong. A man in Texas attempted a gas station holdup, but got flustered when the cashier refused to open the register. In a moment of pure desperation, he blurted out, "Fine, then give me a pack of gum." The confused cashier complied. The man stormed out with nothing but a 99-cent pack of spearmint gum and was arrested 3 blocks away, chewing furiously. 39. A burglar in Arizona underestimated just how much effort goes into lifting stolen goods. He broke into a gym after hours and tried to steal a full set of dumbbells. Realizing too late that weights are, well, heavy, he could barely drag them out the door before collapsing from exhaustion. Officers found him passed out next to the dumbbells, completely out of breath. 40. If you're gonna break into a house, maybe don't leave your phone behind. A burglar in Texas accidentally dropped his unlocked phone at the crime scene. The police picked it up and found selfies, text messages about the robbery, and even a missed call from mom. His arrest was just a matter of waiting for him to call back asking where his phone was. 41. Some people just shouldn't handle pressure. A man in Tennessee tried robbing a grocery store, but got confused when the cashier asked, "Debit or credit?" He panicked, swiped a random stolen credit card, and waited for approval. The machine declined the transaction, twice. Before he could react, the cashier smirked and said, "Want to try another one?" The police arrived before he could decide. 42. If you're planning a robbery, learn your exits first. A man in Florida held up a convenience store, grabbed a bag of cash, and made a break for it, only to slam face first into a door labeled "Push." The store's automatic doors were temporarily broken, so he just kept ramming into the glass like a panicked bird. The cashier, unfazed, called the police while watching him struggle. 43. Some burglars leave with valuables. This guy left with nothing but nightmares. A man broke into an elderly woman's house thinking it would be an easy target, until he stepped inside and saw hundreds of porcelain clown dolls staring at him from every shelf. Terrified, he fled without stealing a thing, later telling officers that the eyes followed him. Even the cops refused to go inside. 44. A thief in Oregon thought he found the perfect hiding spot: a large trash bin behind a fast food restaurant. What he didn't realize? It was grease collection night. As he climbed in, a worker emptied a full vat of scalding hot fryer grease right on top of him. His screams attracted plenty of attention, mostly from laughing customers filming the whole thing. 45. If you're going to rob a store, at least try to stay on your feet. A man in Arizona stormed into a liquor shop yelling for cash, only to slip on a puddle of spilled beer and knock himself unconscious before he even reached the counter. The cashier, who hadn't even seen him yet, heard the crash, looked over the counter and muttered, "Well, that was easy." 46. A man in Texas tried to rob a restaurant by crawling through the drive-thru window. The flaw in his plan? The window was too small. Halfway through, he got completely stuck, legs dangling outside like a malfunctioning vending machine toy. Employees took their time calling 911, casually finishing their shift while he wiggled helplessly. 47. Some criminals pick the wrong place at the wrong time. This guy mastered both. A man in Michigan attempted to steal a cash register during a police fundraiser. Dozens of officers were already inside eating dinner when they heard the register slam onto the floor. Instead of running, the man froze in place, realizing he had just committed a crime in the worst possible room. 48. A man in California tried to escape from the police by running into a cornfield. Smart, right? Except he forgot it was harvest season. Within minutes, a massive combine harvester rolled in, forcing him to bolt straight back onto the road, where police were casually waiting with open handcuffs. 49. Some criminals go for subtlety. Others go for whatever this was. A thief in Florida shoplifted 50 frozen lobsters by stuffing them down his pants. His genius plan? Walk out looking completely normal. Unfortunately, as he reached the exit, one of the lobsters twitched. He screamed, ripped off his pants, and bolted, leaving behind nothing but a pile of seafood and a lifetime ban from the store. 50. Cold. Hard cash is one thing. Just cold? Not so great. A man in Ohio broke into a bakery looking for cash, but ended up locked inside the industrial freezer. Panicking, he grabbed his phone and called 911, only to hang up when he remembered he was the criminal. He tried to tough it out, but by the time the baker arrived for work the next morning, he was shivering in a corner, muttering, "I regret everything." 51. If you're stealing something heavy, bring a plan. A thief in Kentucky tried to make off with a full-sized ATM by dragging it down the street on a rope tied to his car. He got about half a block before the sparks and screeching metal woke up the entire neighborhood. Residents called 911 while recording his slow-motion getaway. 52. A burglar in Washington planned his escape perfectly, except for one tiny detail. He shimmied down from a rooftop using an old pipe, which broke off halfway. He plummeted straight into a dumpster full of packing peanuts. When police arrived, they found him flailing like a trapped insect, surrounded by thousands of tiny foam pieces. 53. Some criminals should just stay home. A man in Georgia walked into a bank and passed the teller a stick-up note. The problem? He wrote it on the back of his own prescription slip, which included his full name and address. The teller simply excused herself, walked into the back, and called the cops, who were already on their way to his house. 54. A man in Colorado tried to steal a car while it was still being fueled. He hopped into the driver's seat, floored the gas, and immediately ripped the gas pump out of the ground, spraying gasoline everywhere. The station attendant hit the emergency shutoff, and by the time the thief scrambled out of the car, his shoes were literally soaked in fuel. When police caught up to him, they suggested not smoking in the back of the patrol car. 55. If you're going to rob a store, maybe don't choose one where everyone is armed. A man in Texas stormed into a hunting supply shop, pointed a gun, and demanded cash, only to instantly realize his mistake. Within seconds, every customer inside pulled out their own weapons. The would-be robber froze, put his hands up, and nervously asked, "So, we good?" The store owner replied, "Oh, we real good." 56. Some criminals focus on execution. Others don't even think past step one. A man in Florida tried robbing a convenience store with a toy gun, but halfway through his demands, a customer grabbed it and shouted, "Dude, this is from Walmart. It still has the price tag." The thief panicked, yelled, "It's the thought that counts," and ran straight into a glass door. 57. If you're gonna rob a store, at least learn the layout first. A guy in Texas ran into a supermarket, filled a bag with cash from the register, and sprinted for the exit, only to realize he was in a windowless backroom. He spent a solid 30 seconds spinning in circles, trying to find a door, before the manager calmly pointed to the emergency exit right next to the cops walking in. 58. A man in Arizona thought he had a genius escape plan, stealing a bicycle to flee the scene. One small problem? He stole it from a triathlon competitor, who chased him down on foot, tackled him to the ground, and sat on him until the police arrived. "Dumbest workout of my life," the athlete later told reporters. 59. Some disguises are clever. This one? Not so much. A thief in Georgia covered his face with a plastic grocery bag, but forgot to cut air holes. Mid-robbery, he blacked out from lack of oxygen and collapsed at the counter. The cashier, He just walked around the register and tied him up with duct tape before calling 911. 60. A Florida man attempted to steal a car, but got confused by the push-to-start button. He sat there for a full 3 minutes, pressing random controls while the owner stood outside filming. The police showed up to find him still in the driver's seat, furiously yelling, "Start, you stupid car!" It did, in park, launching him straight into the dashboard. 61. A man in California held up a gas station but got impatient when the clerk struggled with the register. His brilliant plan? Helping her open it. He leaned over, pressed a few buttons, and boom, the register popped open. The clerk handed him a few bills, and then pressed the silent alarm while he was busy teaching her how to rob her own store. 62. A burglar in Ohio got greedy. After ransacking a house, he spotted a beautiful leather recliner and decided, might as well take a nap. The problem? The chair was a massage recliner, and he accidentally turned it on. The vibrations were so relaxing that he passed out cold. The homeowners walked in to find him snoring like a baby, drooling onto their coffee table. 63. Some criminals rely on weapons. This one relied on interpretive dance. A man in Michigan stormed into a bank, flailed his arms, and mimed holding a gun, except he didn't have one. The teller stared at him for a moment before asking, "Are you having a seizure?" Completely flustered, the man dropped the act and mumbled, I'd like to make a withdrawal." He left empty-handed, but with one hell of a performance review. 64. A burglar in Alabama needed a flashlight, so he grabbed the first thing he saw, his phone. Unfortunately, it was already set to record, and when he accidentally uploaded the video to Facebook Live, his friends and family flooded the comments. "Bro, is this a crime?" His mom even chimed in, "We raised you better." The cops agreed. 65. You'd think robbing a jewelry store would require some level of coordination. Not for this guy. A man in Nevada ran in, grabbed a display case and tried sprinting out the door, only to slam into a bulletproof glass window. The force sent him flying backward, shattering the case all over the floor. Before police even arrived, employees were already collecting the scattered diamonds. 66. There's dumb, and then there's walking backward into a store dumb. A man in Kentucky figured he could outsmart security cameras by walking backward into a store so they wouldn't recognize his face. Solid plan, except the cameras still recorded his entire body. Employees didn't even need to check the footage. They just followed the footprints leading directly back to his house. 67. Some people have getaway cars. This guy had a getaway lawnmower. After robbing a store, he tried escaping at full speed, on a riding mower that topped out at 5 mph. A cop on foot casually walked next to him and said, "You want to pull over or should I jog a little longer?" 68. A man in Washington broke into a house, stole electronics, and stuffed everything into a suitcase, only to realize he'd stolen the homeowner's suitcase. The homeowner walked in as the burglar zipped it up and said, "Dude, you know that's mine, right?" The thief froze, looked down, and muttered, "Well, now this is awkward." 69. A man in New York thought he could steal an ATM by disguising himself as a repairman. He wore a high-vis vest, brought a dolly, and casually tried to wheel the ATM out. He almost got away with it, until an actual employee asked for his work ID. His response? I left it in the truck." Security wasn't impressed. 70. Some criminals panic, others double down. A man in Ohio stole a purse at a restaurant and ran, only to slip on a freshly mopped floor and wipe out. But instead of fleeing, he jumped up and shouted, "I'm suing!" The manager crossed his arms and replied, "Buddy, you were the crime." Police arrived to arrest him before he could even finish his fake injury act. 71. A man in Arizona tried to rob a store dressed as a mannequin. He stood perfectly still in the display window for hours, waiting for the place to close. The plan almost worked, until the security guard walked by and noticed the mannequin sweating profusely. When the guard tapped on the glass, the statue panicked, bolted, and ran straight into the automatic doors, knocking himself out cold. 72. Some criminals are bad at hiding, others are just lazy. A man in Georgia ran from the cops after a botched robbery but got so tired that he flagged down a passing Uber. The driver, unaware, took him directly to his house, where police were already waiting. His excuse? Man, I was too out of breath to keep running. 73. This parrot ruined a robbery. A Florida man tried to rob a pet store, but got distracted by a talking parrot. As he was stuffing stolen merchandise into his bag, the parrot squawked, "Hey, I see you!" Panicked, the thief started yelling back at the bird, trying to get it to shut up. He got so worked up that he didn't notice the employees locking the doors behind him. By the time he turned around, the police were already inside. 74. If you're gonna rob a bank, don't do it with a bag full of popcorn. A man in Texas forgot to bring a real money bag, so he dumped out his movie theater popcorn and used that. As the teller filled it with cash, greasy butter stains started leaking through. By the time he got to his getaway car, the popcorn bag completely disintegrated, spilling all the cash into the wind. Witnesses described it as watching someone lose the saddest lottery ever. 75. If your getaway plan starts with drive through a wall, rethink your career choices. A man in California thought he could steal an entire ATM by driving his truck through a bank wall. The problem? He didn't realize ATMs are bolted to the ground. Instead of yanking it loose, he ripped off his own bumper. The license plate was still attached. Cops didn't even have to chase him. They just followed the trail of coolant leaking from his wrecked truck all the way home. 76. Some criminals think fast. Others think way too slow. A man in Nevada robbed a liquor store and, in a last-second panic, tried to blend in with customers. His brilliant idea? Pick up a magazine and pretend to read. The problem? He was holding it upside down. The cashier, unimpressed, called 911 while he pretended to be deeply engrossed in upside-down crossword puzzles. 77. A thief in Washington thought he had a clean getaway until he bragged about it on a dating app. After robbing a gas station, he updated his bio to say, "Just came into some serious cash." Unfortunately for him, one of his matches was a police officer who responded with, "Cool, wanna grab a drink? Also, we have a warrant for your arrest." 78. If you're going to rob a store, maybe don't stop for selfies. A man in Colorado broke into a pawn shop and decided to pose with the stolen jewelry, using the store's own security cameras as his mirror. He even tried different angles before leaving. By morning, police had crystal-clear photos of his face, his outfit, and his terrible duck face pose. 79. A thief tried to steal a motorcycle by riding it right out of the showroom. He revved the engine, gunned the throttle, and immediately crashed through a glass display case. Employees calmly stood there watching as he limped out of the wreckage and tried to act like he was just testing it out. Police arrived before he could even find the exit door. 80. A man in Alabama robbed a fast food joint and tried to escape through the drive-thru window. He made it halfway out, until his belt got caught on the fryer station. He dangled there, upside down, kicking wildly as employees slowly handed him over to the police. One officer reportedly asked, "Would you like fries with that arrest?" 81. Some criminals choke under pressure. This guy just choked on gasoline. A man in Ohio thought he could steal gas by sucking it out of a police car with a straw. Not realizing gasoline is toxic, he took a huge sip, immediately started gagging, and collapsed on the spot. The officers, watching from a security camera, laughed so hard they had to pause the recording before coming outside to arrest him. 82. A thief in New York tried to escape on a stolen skateboard. One problem, he had never skated before in his life. The second he pushed off, he wobbled, flailed his arms, and face-planted straight into a fire hydrant. Witnesses said the hydrant won the fight. 83. A man in Texas attempted to rob a karate dojo. No, not a store that sells karate gear, an actual martial arts school. He walked in, demanded cash, and instantly got kicked in the face. When officers arrived, the thief was tied up with a black belt's belt and politely waiting to be arrested. 84. A man in Georgia broke into a restaurant's kitchen but got so hungry that he stopped to make a full steak dinner. He was still searing the meat when police arrived. His excuse? "You guys want some?" 85. A perfect crime leaves no trail. This one left a literal roadmap. A man in Arizona tried to steal a safe by dragging it down the street. He didn't realize it was leaving deep scratch marks on the sidewalk, leading directly to his house. Officers knocked on his door and simply said, "Wanna guess how we found you?" 86. Some people dream of performing on stage. Others make it part of their arrest record. A man in Texas tried to rob a bar but got distracted by the karaoke machine. Instead of making a quick escape, he grabbed the mic and started belting out "Livin' on a Prayer." By the time he reached the second chorus, police were already standing behind him, waiting for the grand finale. One officer even clapped and said, "Not bad. Now let's take it from the top. Name and date of birth?" 87. Some thieves disappear into the night. Others lose track of time completely. A burglar in California broke into a clock repair shop and got so fascinated by the vintage watches that he forgot to leave. He was still admiring a grandfather clock when the owner walked in the next morning and asked, "So, you moving in or should I call the cops?" 88. A Florida man tried to escape the police by hiding in a swamp. His master plan? Cover himself in mud and stay perfectly still, like an alligator. Unfortunately, he wasn't the only thing in the swamp. Moments later, he ran screaming out of the water after an actual gator took interest. The officers just stood there, laughing. "We were going to arrest you, but it looks like nature got there first." 89. Getting away with a crime requires quick thinking. This guy decided to take a nap. A man in Nevada attempted to steal a car but couldn't figure out how to unlock the doors. After 5 minutes of struggling, he got frustrated and decided to just take a nap inside the vehicle. What he didn't realize? It was a cop car. Officers returned from a coffee break to find him snoring in the back seat. 90. A thief in Washington thought he could make a quick getaway on stilts. Yes, stilts. After shoplifting from a party store, he strapped them on and tried to casually walk away. He actually made it a full block before a pothole took him down like a falling oak tree. When police arrived, he was still tangled in his stilts, trying to negotiate from the ground. 91. Some criminals use disguises. This guy used a cardboard box. A man in Alabama tried to rob a store by cutting eye holes into a moving box and wearing it on his head. The flaw in his plan? Security cameras caught everything, except his face. When the cops arrived, they just waited outside as he repeatedly walked into shelves, knocking over entire displays. 92. A burglar in Texas crawled through a doggy door, only to be met by a Great Dane the size of a small horse. Instead of attacking, the dog just sat on him. He screamed for help for 15 minutes while the massive dog wagged its tail. The owners came home, saw the scene, and casually called 911. "Yeah, our dog caught a criminal. Y'all want to come get him?" 93. A man in Kentucky fell through the ceiling of a convenience store while trying to rob it. Instead of running, he pretended to be a customer, picked up a soda and said, "Wow, crazy night, huh?" The cashier simply pointed to the giant hole in the ceiling and asked, "You paying for that too?" 94. A thief in California tried to rob a karate instructor at an ATM. The man calmly set down his wallet and said, "You sure about this?" The thief, confused, demanded the cash, right before getting flipped onto the pavement. A nearby officer witnessed the whole thing and casually walked up. "Need any help or you got this?" The instructor nodded. "Nah, I got this." 95. If you're gonna steal something, don't stop for snacks mid-robbery. A burglar in Ohio broke into a restaurant and decided to whip himself up a full meal. He was halfway through cooking a steak when the owner arrived, stared at him, and asked, "You want sides with that?" The thief just sighed and said, "Might as well." The police arrived before he could finish his meal. 96. A not-so-bright thief broke into a store, stole a bunch of lottery tickets, and came back the next day to cash in the winning ones. The clerk, who had filed the police report himself, calmly scanned the ticket and said, "Congratulations, you just won a free ride to jail." 97. Not all art is flexible, especially when it's painted on wood. A man in New York tried to steal an expensive painting by rolling it up and shoving it down his pants. The flaw? It was painted on wood. Security footage showed him waddling stiffly out of the museum before collapsing on the sidewalk, unable to bend his knees. Officers found him struggling to stand up like a fallen mannequin. 98. A thief in Oregon tried to escape police by stealing a horse. His plan fell apart immediately when the horse refused to move. Turns out it only responded to its owner's commands. The man tried whispering, "Giddy up," but the horse just stood there, judging him. The police didn't even have to run. They just strolled up and arrested him while he kept trying to negotiate with the horse. 99. A burglar in Arizona hid inside a porta potty to avoid capture. One problem: it was freshly cleaned and filled with blue disinfectant water. Officers heard him splashing around inside, locked the door, and tipped it on its side before calling it in. His mugshot? Completely blue from head to toe. 100. Technology has advanced, but criminals? Not so much. A man in Texas tried to steal a Tesla but forgot they have GPS tracking. He made it about 5 miles before the owner remotely locked the doors and put the car in park. The thief sat inside, trapped, while the owner calmly called the cops. When they arrived, he pretended to be asleep, hoping they'd think he was just a lost passenger. Spoiler: they didn't. 101. A Florida man ran from the police and hid inside a bounce house at a kid's birthday party. His grand escape plan: jumping his way to freedom. It was going great, until officers got in with him. Instead of running, the criminal kept bouncing, desperately trying to dodge cops like a Looney Tunes character. Eventually, an officer sighed, double-bounced him, and sent him flying into custody. And there you have it. 101 proof-of-concept failures in the world of crime. If this video taught us anything, it's that some people are less criminal mastermind and more criminal oops. Which one was your favorite? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed watching these heists go hilariously wrong, don't forget to like and subscribe. Because trust me, there's plenty more where this came from. Until next time, stay smart. Or at least smarter than these guys.